Today we're back in southern Africa, specifically Botswana, Tsodilo Hills, sometimes called the Mountains of the Gods. Hidden inside one of these hills, the Female Hill, is something that has been puzzling archaeologists for years. A 6-meter long rock, shaped like a python. And depending on who you ask, it may be part of one of the oldest ritual sites ever proposed. Or it might not be. The argument isn't about whether the rock exists. The question is much harder. How old is the activity around it? Inside Rhino Cave sits a large stone formation that strongly resembles a python, similar to the rock python that still live in the area today. Because of this, the cave has been known as Python Cave, and the formation itself is often called the Python Sculpture. Along the body of the rock are small chip depressions known as cupules. They look almost like scales carved into the surface. The marks appear deliberate and seem to have been made over time, similar to how rock art was sometimes added to gradually across repeated visits in the area. There's also a small crack near the top of the cave that lets in beams of light. When the light hits the chipped marks, the surface glints slightly, giving the strange impression that the python is moving toward you. Nearby, archaeologists have discovered stone spear points and other artifacts. And this is where the mystery really begins, because some of these spear points resemble tools from the Middle Stone Age. Across Africa, similar spear points have been securely dated to around 70,000 years ago. That led archaeologist Sheila Coulson and others to explore a bold possibility. If those artifacts really belong to the activity at this cave, then the site itself may also date back to that period, potentially making it one of the oldest proposed non-burial ritual sites ever identified. But this idea is controversial, and many archaeologists remain skeptical. One reason is the dating of the rock art nearby. The rock paintings inside and around Rhino Cave are generally believed to be much younger, roughly 2,000 years old or more. While other rock art in the broader Tsodilo region may be far older, there's currently no clear evidence connecting those earlier phases directly to the python feature itself. Still, that's almost a 70,000 year age gap. Maybe that's not long for the mountain, but for us that's a bit much. And that's part of why researchers are cautious. Another reason comes down to how the site formed. Take Blombos Cave in South Africa, for instance. There, researchers found cross-hatched engravings on ochre and shell beads, securely dated to about 73,000 years ago. The difference? Archaeologists were able to rely on clear, layered sediment deposits. Those act like a timeline. Python Cave is different. Instead of neat layers, much of the material sits in what archaeologists call lag deposits, concentrations of artifacts left behind as sediments erode and shift over time. In other words, things from different periods can end up mixed together. Python Cave is much messier, leading skeptics to argue that the 70,000-year-old spearheads might have just ended up next to a much younger rock feature by sheer coincidence. That makes it much harder to prove whether the spear points in the python rock were actually part of the same ancient activity. And this is where archaeological caution becomes important. Just because two objects are found near each other doesn't mean they belong to the same moment in time. Finding a spear point that might date to 60 or 70,000 years ago next to a stone feature doesn't automatically mean the feature is that old. There's also a broader reason for caution. In recent years, debates around sites like Homo naledi, where some researchers proposed extremely ancient burials and engravings, have made the archaeological community particularly careful about labeling cave features as ritual without very strong evidence. In a field wary of sensationalism, the Python Cave sits in a difficult spot. It's a whisper of ancient spirit in a room where scientists are demanding a shout. It's intriguing, but the proof remains uncertain. And still, the possibility is fascinating. Finding the oldest ritual site would be paradigm-changing for archaeology and how we understand the deep human past. For example, the materials for the spear points aren't local, meaning either the people purposely traveled the hundreds of kilometers for materials, or trade could have occurred. Some of these spearheads found at the site appear intentionally altered as well, broken or burned in ways that don't match normal hunting damage or random wildfires. If that interpretation is correct, it suggests these tools may have been deliberately modified for some purpose. Possibly symbolic, possibly ritualistic. And if the oldest dates were correct, that would mean something remarkable. It would suggest that tens of thousands of years ago, people may have already been returning to specific places in the landscape for shared meaning. Not cities, not temples, but intentional gathering at places that mattered. Places people came back to. Anthropologists sometimes describe places like this as an aggregation site. For most of the year, small hunter-gatherer groups might live spread across a huge landscape. But at certain times, they gather at specific locations for ritual, exchange, marriage partnerships, and even communal events. Tsodilo Hills sits in a landscape that could have easily supported that kind of periodic gathering. A striking landmark in the desert, a place tied to water, and a place people clearly return to over long stretches of time. Of course, we can't say that's exactly what happened here 70,000 years ago. But the possibility helps explain why places like this appear again and again in the archaeological record. And if that's even partly true, it would push organized, symbolic behavior deeper into the human story than many people would assume. That's why the debate continues. Some researchers are open to the idea that the activity at Python Cave could stretch back into the Middle Stone Age. Others think the safer explanation is that the visible activity in the cave is much younger. For now, the evidence simply isn't decisive. What we do know is that Tsodilo Hills have been important to people for a very long time. The surrounding region contains thousands of rock paintings, some of the oldest in Botswana. And archaeological evidence shows human presence in the area stretching back tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of years. So whether the Python sculpture turns out to be 70,000 years old, or much younger, the site still tells us something important. For thousands of years, people have come to these mountains and found meaning here. People are inspired to make the Python sculpture and recreate the world as they saw it. Even today, Christian pilgrims come to the hills for healing waters from its springs. Tourists and researchers come to understand and admire the landscape that inspired the rock art. The local people today still revere the hills as a place of spirits and come to honor them. And I think people will be coming here and leaving their mark in the future as well. Perhaps this is how the ritual started in the first place. Let me know what you think about the age of the Python Cave in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Like and subscribe too, please. It helps the channel out. Cheers. Bye.